Alright then, my little friends, today I shall tell you of the dark passage through the Mines of Moria. Many know the story in fragments, and whispers, and old songs that are no longer sung, not even in the halls of Rivendell. But few, very few have felt the echo of Moria in their bones. I have. And not just once. Khazad-dûm, the great Dwarves, Durin's pride, father of all. Once it rose as the masterwork of the Stoneborn, the crowning glory of the Dwarves. But now it is but a gaping wound in the heart of the misty mountains. A deep, ancient wound that oozes silence and shadow. It is my duty to walk its halls from time to time, not out of nostalgia, but caution. For darkness does not die, it merely sleeps and dreams. I began my descent from the western gates, hidden among forgotten cliffs, shrouded in thick moss where the roots of ancient trees cling like the fingers of sleeping giants. No clear path leads there. Nature has tried, and failed, to reclaim what was never truly hers. I climbed slowly, breathing in the old air that drifted down from the stone like a warning. Silence ruled the mountainside, broken only by the soft crunch of damp leaves beneath my boots and the distant cry of a lone raven watching from above, as if it knew where I was going. The West Gate, also known as Durin's Door, does not reveal itself to impatient eyes. Carved into the living stone, so perfectly set that to the untrained gaze, one might not notice the line separating mountain from entrance. I stopped before that gray wall, stained by centuries of rain, wind, and forgetting. I ran my palm across its cold surface. I could feel the faint thrum of history pulsing beneath the rock, like the heartbeat of something that, somehow, had never truly stopped. Then I whispered the ancient words. "Melon," I said softly, a whisper swallowed by the stone. And as I spoke the elvish word for friend, the mountain answered. Not with thunder, nor light, but with a sigh. A long exhale of centuries held in silence. The lines of the carvings began to glow with a faint bluish light, like the stirrings of a dream long buried. The stone shivered gently, cracked open, and with slow, solemn motion, the gate parted, revealing the threshold. What lay beyond was not immediate darkness, but something more unsettling, a thick, motionless gloom that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. As I stepped into the mountain, the light from the outside world vanished like a candle caught in a silent storm. Behind me, the air had been fresh, vibrant, filled with the murmurs of forest and open sky. But inside, everything changed. The first thing I noticed was the air. Colder, yes, but also heavier. As if the mountain itself breathed slowly, exhaling memories that had been trapped within it for centuries. The smell was dense, a mixture of ancient dampness, worn stone, rusted iron, and something else, something like old ash. That scent brought back memories of distant battles, of collapsed tunnels, of books written in tongues no longer spoken. I walked with my staff held high. The light at its tip flickered at first, as if hesitant, as if unwilling to shine in that place. But with a firm whisper from within, it lit up. It wasn't a strong light. It was soft, golden, barely enough to illuminate a few feet ahead. Enough to walk. Enough to see, but not enough to dispel the shadows that waited beyond. The nearby columns, immense, carved from the living stone, rose from the ground like giants standing in eternal watch. My light brushed their surfaces, revealing carvings that spoke of a time of glory, crossed hammers, runes of protection, banners of clans long gone. But they were also covered in dust, cracks, and cobwebs as thick as forgotten shrouds. Everything breathed abandonment. Each step I took echoed through the vastness. But sound behaved differently here. It did not bounce back with joy or clarity. Here, it descended, stretched, and dissolved, as if my footsteps were awakening sleeping echoes, whispers trapped beneath layers of centuries. They were not empty echoes. They had weight. They had presence. Some answered me with a delay that seemed to ignore the laws of time. A single footstep could be heard several times, each fainter, farther away, as if traveling through hidden corridors, stirring memories in halls I had yet to reach. The silence between each sound grew heavier. It wasn't the absence of noise, it was a presence. Silence here has form. It has substance. It wrapped around me, clung to my cloak, my beard, my soul. It was the silence of a land that had seen too much, that had lost its children, that had been forgotten by the world and had sunk into its own sorrow. My fingers, brushing along the wall, felt the roughness of centuries of erosion. But if one paused long enough, you could also feel a subtle tingling in the old runes, as if a spark of magic still pulsed within them. I knelt at one point and ran my hand across an inscription. It read, "Here began the kingdom under the mountain. May the stone uphold us." It was a vow and a warning. As I went deeper, I noticed how the outside world began to fade from my mind. The trees, the sky, the sunlight, all became a blurred memory. The mountain did not merely surround me, it absorbed me. I became part of its entrails. A traveler does not enter Moria. It is Moria who decides whether to allow one in and whether to let one out. I continued, step by step, certain that somewhere in that vast stone immensity, something already knew I was there. The first corridors were covered in dust, fine ash, and fragments of bone that crunched beneath my feet. Traces of the last battle still remained, rusted swords, broken shields, black arrows embedded in stone. Time does not erase horror, it merely covers it in silence. I moved toward the eastern gallery, where once hundreds of craftsmen worked. Now it is a tomb of abandoned tools. There, I stopped. I listened. And I heard it, a subtle sound, barely a whisper. Like the brush of fabric, like breathing. But no one was there. Or perhaps there was, though not in visible form. I continued toward the infested halls. That name is not given lightly, nor born of bardic exaggeration or campfire tales among soldiers. It is a name earned, feared, respected even by those who claim not to fear. The infested halls are older than the songs of the Dwarves, darker than the shadow of Mordor, and their mere mention silences even the boldest. Their very existence is an open wound in the heart of Moria. I advanced slowly, not from weariness, but out of respect. For one does not walk these stones without offering silence. The air in that region was as thick as fog, but without moisture. Its weight was not physical, it was spiritual. As though the sins of past ages floated suspended there, trapped in dust unmoved by the passing centuries. I paused before one of the central columns and observed how moss had formed patterns resembling faces. Faces that seemed to watch, to judge, to remember. The walls breathe. Not metaphorically. There are moments when they swell slightly, as if containing something behind them. Beneath my fingers I felt a subtle vibration, like a murmur not yet sound, like a song someone hums from the other side of the stone. The light of my staff, still steady, seemed at times to recoil, as though fearing to shine too far into certain corners. I did not stop. For to pause there, beneath those fallen beams and among those ancient echoes, is to tempt the mountain to remember you. I saw shadows slipping between columns, quick, subtle. I saw eyes. Not two. Not four. Dozens. Of varied sizes, at different heights. Some fixed like invisible torches, others moving slowly, following my every step. They reflected the light of my staff with a dull gleam, like embers beneath ash. They did not lunge. They did not approach. They merely observed. Studied. Calculated. What I sensed was not hunger, it was judgment. Perhaps they recognized me. Perhaps they knew I too had spoken with shadows, and that I know their language. Perhaps they did not see an enemy, but an equal. Or perhaps they were simply waiting for another moment. I passed through a narrow opening, its edges hand-carved but now worn by time and neglect. That crack led to a series of vertical shafts, true abysses within the abyss. Structures built by dwarven hands to extract minerals long since forgotten. Tunnels that descended beyond comprehension, down to layers of rock where even history dares not gaze. From those depths blows a dry, hot air, unlike the rest of the mountain. It is not air that belongs to this age. It is not air meant to be breathed. It is the breath of something vast. Something that has slept since times even before the Vala. Something that waits. something that remembers. Few in today's world know of this place. Fewer still have seen it. For many who enter do not return. And those who do not speak. Even I, with all I know, feel that there are depths down there that should never be touched. Not out of fear, but out of respect. There are fires that still burn. And they are not forge fires. They are flames that consume neither metal nor wood. They are flames of the soul, of creation itself. Primal energies that the dwarves awakened without understanding. And what was released never fully went back to sleep. Farther ahead, the path led me to a collapsed barricade. Charred wood, rusted nails, broken tools. A final line of resistance, the last desperate effort to hold back the inevitable. The structure, though rotted, still echoed the struggle of those who fought there. I saw signs of combat, deep gouges in the stone, as if made by heavy weapons or massive claws. I saw dark stains on the walls. Some were dried blood. Others, I could not say. There were markings carved hastily, with knives or nails, perhaps with fingernails. I read an inscription still visible, scratched into a stone near the ground. It said, "Durin watches over us." A plea, a cry, or a bitter irony. For even the old gods fall silent in Moria. I knelt and picked up a small bronze medallion, corroded, almost unrecognizable. A clan emblem. I held it between my fingers, and for an instant, I thought I heard the distant voice of a woman singing in the dwarvish tongue. It was not real, but neither was it entirely false. I continued through the high corridors, where the ceiling rises beyond sight, lost in eternal gloom. There, sound changes. It does not behave as it should. It distorts. It whispers. It anticipates. It speaks in voices that are not your own. Once, as I crossed an empty gallery, I heard my name. Not carried by echo, nor by wind, but with intent. And it was not my voice. It was the voice of someone I had known. Someone who had died centuries ago, on another continent, in another war. She spoke with tenderness, with sorrow. And yet, I knew it was not her. It was not her soul. It was a memory, taken by the mountain, used as bait. I did not stop. And that, in that moment, was my only victory. I reached the Chamber of Echoes, a circular hall where every sound multiplies infinitely. There I tested something. I whispered the name Sauron. And the echo returned it not in my voice, but in another. A deep, broken voice, mocking. I said no more and moved on. At last, I reached the Hall of Kings. Pillars over 30 meters high held it aloft. Dwarven faces, carved with millennia of precision, looked down on me with judgment and sorrow. I stopped before the statue of Durin. In his onyx eyes, a spark still gleamed. Pride? Warning? I do not know. I passed through the final corridor, the oldest of all. Here, the walls are not carved. They are living stone. The air grows heavy. My staff crackled without cause. The presence of something ancient, something beyond my understanding, could be felt. I quickened my pace. And then, finally, I arrived. The tomb of Balin. A sacred place. A stone sanctuary, forgotten in the deep places of the world. There is no fire, no lamp, no chant to honor it. And yet, its very presence silences the spirits that wander these halls. It is a place where even the darkness halts its advance and holds its breath. There, in the center of the hall, lies the sepulchre. Simple. Dignified. Solid, like the character of its occupant. It is not adorned with gems or gold. It does not need them. It is carved from a single piece of gray stone, slightly weathered by time, but unbreakable. Around it, broken columns and empty benches, silent witnesses of past battles, of prayers no longer uttered. The runes remain intact. Clear. Steady. as if they had been engraved only yesterday, Balin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria. And as I read them, the air seemed to hold its breath. I bowed before him, not out of protocol, nor habit, but out of genuine respect. Balin was not a king in the classical sense. He was a dreamer, a pioneer, a brave soul who believed he could bring life back to these mines, and died for that hope. A martyr of his people, a heroic echo, trapped between walls of stone. From within my robes, I took a dried flower, a memory, a bloom from the ethereal gardens of Lothlorien, which I had carried with me for a long time. Not by chance, but with purpose, to one day honor someone truly worthy. And there, in that forgotten chamber beneath the mountain, I knew that moment had come. I placed it gently upon the tomb. The contrast between the flower's fragility and the tomb's strength was striking. One, the fleetingness of life; the other, the permanence of memory. Total silence. But this time, it was not an empty silence. It was not the void one hears in a deserted cavern. It was a heavy silence, dense, almost physical. Like that of a great hall filled with presences that do not breathe. As if an invisible multitude surrounded me, watching, judging, or perhaps waiting for something. The air was still, and I felt upon my skin the same tension that comes before a magical storm. I did not remain long. I could not. I should not die. Because I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had been seen. That I was not alone. That from the moment I stepped through the western gate, my steps had been followed. I felt a faint tremor beneath my feet. It was not the earth. It was not a fault line. It was something else. As if a deep consciousness, buried in the heart of the mountain, had opened and I just for an instant. A brief blink of recognition. And with it, a silent message: I have seen you. Do not forget that I am here. That instant was enough. I straightened, turned, and prepared to depart. On the way back, I passed once more through every place: the infested halls, the lofty corridors, the bottomless pits. But this time, there were no words, no songs, no light beyond what was strictly needed. All was silenced. A respectful silence, but tense. Every shadow had formed. Every echo had intentioned. Every corner seemed to hold eyes that turned as I passed, voices that murmured without sound. And as I walked toward the exit, I felt that with each step, I left behind not just stone, but history. Tragedy. Shattered hope. Moria is not merely a mind. It is a living wound in the flesh of the world. It is a reminder of what happens when ambition defies the unfathomable. When I finally emerged once more into daylight, the breeze felt lighter. But I did not feel relief. I emerged with a heavy soul, like one who has walked across the memories of a world that refuses to be forgotten. And it refuses, because it still waits. Waits for someone to return. Waits for someone to free it, or awaken it. And so, my dear little friends, that is how I cross the Mines of Moria from time to time. Not for glory. Not for adventure. Not for nostalgia. I do it because someone must keep watch. Because even in times of peace, the darkness does not sleep entirely. It remains latent, patient, hidden. Waiting for cracks. Waiting for silence. Waiting for forgetfulness. And if one day it returns, if evil once more finds its way to the depths, at least we will know it did not arrive unnoticed, that it was not a surprise, that someone had been there, again and again, to kindle a light, however faint, in the corridors where sunlight has never dared to enter. I, Gandalf the Grey, continue walking. Because the light must go on. Even when it hurts. Even when it weighs heavy. Even when no one sees it. The light must go on. For the day it ceases will be the day the shadow claims what remains of the world. And now, my little friends, night draws near. The shadows stretch even beyond the mountains, and the hearthfire crackles louder, as if wishing to shield us from the world beyond. Let this story serve as a reminder, even forgotten places have a voice, and someone must listen to it. But do not fear, for tomorrow, if the winds are kind and the moon does not hide behind the clouds, I shall tell you another tale, a different one, perhaps filled with more light, or perhaps with more magic. Until then, rest well, keep your hearts alight, and remember, the light does not abandon those who carry it within. Good night, my dear friends.